Good afternoon. Thank you very much for taking an interest in how you might simplify some of your conversations with your regulators and compliance officers. My name is Keith Rodwell. I'm an IT architect within the Business Application Services Group as part of our Global Business Services Division. I'm talking to you in part because I'm involved with Pivotal's introduction to Raytheon from an IT perspective. I'm also a long-term advocate of reduced complexity and continuous integration. I've been doing that across a number of jobs and positions over a number of years. Before we begin, I should go ahead and say a few things. Because we are a military contractor, there's a great deal we will not be able to share with you today, and for that I'm sorry. So some of the details you might hope for, you won't see. Hopefully a number of you were able to attend Dimitri's talk earlier in this room about compliance-driven development. I attended that. I don't know Dimitri, but I thought it was a very good complement to this particular talk. For those of you looking for a roadmap or a simple solution for how you get to easy compliance approval, I'm sorry it doesn't exist. Regulatory landscape is constantly changing, and it really is a twisty road of passages and a lot of sharp falls and pitfalls. You will have stops, you will have setbacks. The good news is that you can approach a dialogue with your compliance folks so that they're willing and understanding of the situation you're in and can help you find solutions. A little bit about Raytheon. So Raytheon is a multinational industry leader for technology and innovation. We have fairly recently started a major expansion into the cybersecurity space. $24 billion in sales in 2016 and more than 63,000 employees worldwide. Our headquarters are based in Massachusetts, where I am as well. We have a number of product divisions. We do integrated defense. We do a series of services around intelligence. We have missiles, and of course, we have space and airborne systems. And as I mentioned earlier, we're starting to really get into the cybersecurity space. And we have a very, very global presence. For those of you who followed the news, there was a fairly recent incident of an intercept of a missile over a major metropolitan area. I'm happy to say that one of our products was very key for the interception of that particular problem. So this, of course, as you operate globally, complicates greatly your regulatory profile. In addition to being a US corporation, we have compliance needs in other countries. It's a very uneven and rapidly changing landscape. Throw into this that we have opposing forces, desires. We have a user community and a development community that is striving to go as fast and as far as they can, as quickly. It's a very, very sunny landscape. And of course, we have our regulators and our compliance folks who are ensuring that we don't take unnecessary risk for the enterprise and ensuring that we're doing things that will pass audit and not provide either enterprise or our customers' risks to be elevated beyond what they are in the normal operating environment. We do hear a lot of go, go, go. We definitely hear and believe that we will be better, faster, and cheaper. But we need to ensure that we have an easy time going from desire to reality. And this hopefully will help. If you walk away with just one image in your head, I hope it's this one. I've seen actually similar diagrams to this in a few presentations, and I think it's a very good one. You can't go to your regulators and say, I want you to prove the internet. You can't say, hey, we're going to use Amazon. Go look at the console. It's a very complex item. They're going to look. They're going to panic. So to even start there, even if you wanted to go with the full public offerings, you're going to be constrained by what, in our case, the government will constrain and allow you to do. There are a variety of standards that talk about this. We'll talk a little bit about impact levels. So impact level 2 is public services like AWS and Azure. Government services usually are impact level 4, GovCloud from AWS and Microsoft Azure Government from Microsoft. And those are the two providers we're talking to, as they're really the only two today that are fully in the space and usable. That constrains the options quite a bit of what can be done. Further constraints will come from your own regulatory bodies. IT security, export-import controls are going to look at what's possible and say, no, we're not going to do that because it provides risk, or we don't have the controls and mechanisms in place today to say that we can safely use that. But that's okay. And the reason it's okay is you're almost certainly not going to want to reuse out of the gate or wherever you are today the full spectrum of what your regulators would be willing to approve. So as you engage in the dialogue, start with okay, this big thing is huge, scary. Don't assume I'm going to be asking for the world. In the case of like the Amazon console, say, hey, we're going to talk about identity. We're going to talk about EC2. We'll talk about storage. And let's leave all this other stuff alone for now. So we'll walk away from the services and the extensions that can be there. And that one scoping exercise as you go in will be helpful. This is also very helpful on the opposite side. From a service provider's perspective, I'm sorry, developers, we're not going to give you the internet. We're not going to give you the entirety of Amazon or Microsoft. We're going to give you a limited set of services that are well-defined and are things that we can handle, manage, and provide safely. What drives all of this is regulations and company protection. So in our world, these are the 4 big items that we're going to hear almost on a daily basis. International Traffic in Arms Regulations, ITAR, first and foremost, making sure that foreign persons don't have inappropriate access, or if they do have access, it's under license. Export Administration Regulations, EAR, this predominantly applies to services and instructions on how you operate or maintain equipment. Controlled unclassified information, this is a fairly new designation, came out in 2008 as a definition of information that requires special handling by government systems, government contractors, and those who traffic in government data. And very recently is NIST 800-171. If you attended Dimitri's discussion earlier, he talked about 853. 853 and 800-171 have a great deal of overlap. And I would agree with his point that you need to be designing to the regulations that apply to you. If you are doing FDA work, you have to worry about GLP. If you're doing financial work, you have to worry about a variety of regulations there. Banking is separate, credit cards, personally identifiable information. It doesn't matter what your spectrum of regulations are. You just need to be fully aware of that and make sure that you go in with a stance of, we're going to make sure that we cover this. So the 2 paragraphs here are for my primary audience, which is import, export, and IT security. And the red questions are really what they're trying to get to the bottom of. Have we done enough to ensure foreign person access is taken care of? And have we done enough to ensure that we've got the right controls in place for our regulations and audits? Now, you get sub-questions, and that's what's underneath. These are the sorts of things that you're going to be asked, and a lot of these are going to raise anxiety. If you do have systems that have foreign person access, you're going to have a lot more scrutiny, a lot more concern over what it is that you're doing. In the case of IT security and XM, they're very, very concerned that we're not going to damage the enterprise. We need to be able to continue to sell our product. We need to be able to continue to do business. We need to be a trusted partner. Everyone that we deal with has to know that we're a valid, viable, solid, reliable enterprise to do business with. As you go through your deployments and your implementations, there are a bunch of things that you're likely to encounter. These are a few that we looked at going in, and these caused quite a bit of discussion. Automation. So we're heading forward wanting to automate everything. Part of the concern that we're going to have, especially from an IT security perspective, is how far do we reach? If you have identities that can manage their own rights, you have a problem. So in the case of Amazon granting IAM star to an identity to configure Amazon, allowing you to configure your own identity and privileges is going to cause scrutiny. So plan ahead on your implementation so that you have sufficient controls in place. You're unlikely to get internet access allowed directly out of whatever cloud service provider you have. applying and planning for lockout of any possibility of incidental sharing of S3 or going out to an internet gateway as you go forward. Sticking to the top left, tokens. So there are tokens everywhere. We have identity tokens for people, we have identity tokens for applications, we have relationship tokens. Whatever you do for tokening, you're gonna have to ensure that these expire and manage to policy. I'm sure a number of you have already dealt with things like 90-day rotating expirations of passwords or 1-year revocation of certificates, private keys. Whatever policies you have at the enterprise level for the individual and system to system need to be reflected in your automation and in your platform. The good news is that in partnership with your auditors and regulators, you should be able to find some mechanism that's acceptable to them. Your mileage will vary because every organization's views are very different. Connectivity. So in the defense world, most of our foundations will not be internet connected or indirectly connected to the internet. This, if you look at the standard reference model from Pivotal, is not something depicted. The internet gateway sits as the forefront. This is a major design consideration for how you implement. In a number of cases, you'll be looking at air-gapped networks. You need to figure out how you're going to compliantly maintain and patch and apply configuration changes with an air gap or through a bastion host or some other solution. Again, your mileage will vary depending on what your regulators are looking for. And cloud-to-cloud communications. Don't assume that you can build something that you can sit in one cloud and that it's going to have free open access to something in another cloud without potentially ricocheting through your own infrastructure. I mean, a lot of the regulatory compliance comes down to, do we have a solid audit trail? Are we aware and have insight into what's going on? If the answer is no, you're going to see immediate resistance. So plan for exposing that, making it available, providing it to the SIM, providing dashboards is something else that will assist your regulators in helping understand what you're doing. So also, some things aren't going to be allowed, and that's not only just by your regulators. So Amazon's enterprise container registry, as an example, isn't even available in their government offering. And you're going to find this from a number of the cloud service providers. The particular packaging or services you contract for may or may not include key features that you would assume should be there, open and available. Those not in the military space may not be familiar with Authenticate Before Access. NIST 800-171 talks about packet filtering at the network level before you get to an application. So saying I'm going to allow the container, my application, the container to do authentication is probably not going to fly. You're going to need some mechanism in place that verifies identity before you expose the attack surface of your containers in your apps. This is something I think everyone in the military space is familiar with, and I expect that business spaces that are less security conscious will become more security conscious over time with that. Again, I'm going to point to Dimitri's talk this morning. He talked about specific items, including FIPS 140.2. This is an encryption standard. It's easy to say you have something that conforms to this. If you're going to adopt any software solutions that say that they're going to employ encryption for you, they need to be certified. At least in our space, and our regulators are very, very clear about this, saying that you do SHA whatever or FIPS 140.2 whatever. Having that certificate in hand will be good, and going for authorization to operate with all the artifacts in hand will help you out a great deal. Application security groups. Can't say enough about those. As you're probably aware, Pivotal does masquerading and natting of services. How do you filter across your general enterprise for connectivity when the source looks like it's one IP address? So how are you going to do that control? Take a strong look at management of application security groups. These can be your friend. They can be used as something that you can leverage management of with your security and compliance organizations. and with the right level of investment, insight, and control, could be a very suitable substitute for egress firewalls coming out of the platform. Microservices. I don't know how many people have made the mental transition between an information system in the traditional, large monolithic view where you've got some collection of resources that represent a single function, a single unit of risk. And as you break these up into other services, especially shareable services, now it's less clear who owns it, who has control, where are we putting our controls and audits in. My advice would be to look very strongly at seeing what you can implement in the platform and let your applications and services inherit those. And one challenge that we think everyone's going to find is until PCF 2.0, there is no security role for platform operation. You're everything or nothing. So this will be a conversation topic for a very alert organization. I would address that initially, say, I'm sorry, right now we don't have any means to give you a direct control, talk about the processes and things you can develop to do that. Again, I wish I could share with you what we've done and how we've addressed these problems, and unfortunately I can't. From a general approach perspective, if you're in the space where you're going to worry about exports, understand very clearly how you're going to develop, segregate, block, alert foreign person access, especially inappropriate foreign person access. Ensure that you've got a good, solid understanding and management and tracking of application security groups if you're using those to implement controls on foreign person access. And we found, and we think it's very important to have APIs that actually understand not only what you're trying to do, but who you're trying to do it with and how you're handling whatever data it exposes. You can use pipelines, you can use the platform, you can use a number of these technologies to actually provide a very strong compliance stance to your regulators. In fact, you can provide, in most cases, a number of features that they could just say, okay, I'll inherit this, or I'll look at this dashboard, or I'll take these alerts to our SIM, and in lieu of some declaration from IT on how it is that we're going to protect this information, let's instead demonstrate this through our configuration. I think I've already covered dashboards quite a bit already. It's hard to fathom until you get into the dialogue what challenges are going to be there. So in the military space, in the government contractor space, there's a concept of a system security plan. And over the last 2 years, those have gone from complex documents that declare how your system operates, who has access, how you're going to monitor, audit, review, and handle problems, to extremely complex documents. In our case, we are edging on 200 declarations per system that we provide that we need to have reviewed by our risk information officers before we'll get authorization to operate. Plan for the time. Again, if you can come up with standard methodologies that your RIOs will accept out of the platform as inherited, go with it. It also means that you're going to need to look at your changes to ensure that any potential change, any alterations in the platform or your application does not take you out of compliance with your declared controls. Your SSP, once declared, is not a point in time. It's something that you maintain. So again, this is probably more military specific, but again, when you talk in other spaces, your artifacts and documents need to reflect the reality that's there. Coming back to this diagram, and again, if you go away with nothing else, I would ask you do this. Again, constrain the discussion for the services you provide to the set that you know that you can support. Constrain the number of services and features you're looking to implement and consume to the minimal set necessary, and then grow from there. I know I run fast. There are some additional resources, and these will be available on the deck as well for those who want to understand the direction of compliance on US systems containing controlled information. There's a wonderful NIST document for those who want to understand export controls on technical information and arms, ITAR. And I will happily entertain some private dialogues by email, and depending on what people may want to talk about, we may have to get a proprietary information agreement in place, but there's my email for those who would like it. And I guess I'd like to see if we have any questions. Go ahead. I can tell you the intent. The intent is to get to fully automated, but as I'm sure you can imagine, it is challenging, but more importantly, it's not always applicable. So in the case where you have a specific contract with a particular customer, which may be a particular armed force, they may have specific requirements they have on how and when and who approves patching. So we don't like snowflakes. No one likes snowflakes. But the reality is our customers do a great deal of driving on what we do in the spaces outside of IT. So, and air-gapped systems are predominantly outside of my area of expertise and operation. So again, I'm IT. So this is business apps more than it is air-gapped systems. I think I saw another hand. Yeah, well, can't cover that in a few minutes. 853 is the long-standing set of requirements. It's very well fleshed out. 800.171 is a much more open to interpretation document. It is the direction that things are going. If you go with 853, you're going to have a very good, solid basis for what's coming. 800.171 is the guidance we're getting from our compliance folks that we need to be prepared for by the end of next year. So 853 now, 800.171 coming. Sure. Right, so unfortunately for the folks who will listen to this recording later, they didn't get that. Maybe they can get a mic to you in front. Yes, there are a variety of additional regulations. We didn't discuss SRG, which is part of the shared responsibility regulations when your company is not the sole delivery entity. So as an example, if you're in a cloud service provider, SRG applies. 171 applies predominantly to on-prem, so you end up with, again, a very complex regulatory landscape. I think you were first.
Would you say that PCF, Bosch, like any of these pieces that a lot of us are here are using has been helpful in kind of moving towards this regulation of declarative configuration? Is it a better place today than you were 3 years ago for some of these tools, or how has that helped?
No, that's a good question. So basically the question is how much has Bosch helped us? And the answer is it is helping us. I think we're a little bit too early to declare it's a solid win. The reality is when you take out variance, when you take out drift, when you avoid manual mistakes or any misintent, then you're better off. So we're looking to Bosch as a key underpinning of what we do in IT. Again, I can't really speak to the other places. I would entertain a dialogue later. I think you had a question. Wow. Yeah, so the question about how do we manage or how do we recommend managing ASGs? No, I don't have a good recommendation and wouldn't provide guidance. And I'm going to say again, I think it's going to really depend on your security organization. We've gotten to a place where ASGs have a play. Not everyone will. And I would say that if you have particular concern on that, this is a personal recommendation, not a Raytheon recommendation. You should probably look at things like the NSX controls they announced earlier today, NSXT. So, but it's a challenge, and again, you know, each organization is going to be different. Their interpretation is going to be different. Raytheon happens to take an extremely conservative view on this. We never want to be a company that took liberties with interpretation, so tends to be a slightly higher hurdle. I think I saw one other hand. If not, okay. Thank you very much for listening. I invite a dialogue, and there are a bunch of Raytheon people here that have a variety of roles. I'm sure they would entertain a dialogue as well, and thank you for your time.